To get a very macro overview of what's going on at the product level, I like to use a framework which acronym is OURS, and that stands for Activation, Usage, Retention, and Satisfaction. In the activation section, you have all the product's metrics that indicate how good your product is at convincing the users to test it. For example, for a basic SaaS product, might be the conversion rate from sign-up users to active users. If you have a complex onboarding requiring users to do a lot of things such as filling in data or importing data, this activation metric can be the completion rate of your onboarding process. For highly collaborative tools such as the chat system, the activation metrics can be about the average number of colleagues that a user invites. So you get what I mean. The activation really depends on the type of your product. So beyond the pure technical and UI UX aspects of user onboarding, activation metrics can be a good proxy of the interest that users have for your product. If, for example, you manage to activate quite easily users despite a rough onboarding process, it can mean that they are truly interested in trying your product. Whereas if you need to put a lot of effort to simply convince a person just to onboard on your product, you might have a value proposition or a personalized problem to solve first. Usage-related metrics are with retention, the heart of this dashboard. These are the indicators that show whether users really use your product or not. And again, they obviously depend on the type of your product. If your SaaS is a tool for designers, then it can be metrics around the average number of projects created per user and whether the major features are used or not. If it's a developer tool, it can be the number of API calls made on average per user. If it's a marketing tool, it can be the activity around the campaigns created by your users. Basically, you need to find your product North Star that illustrates that your users are really using your product. I probably don't need to explain why it's so important to have such metrics in place, but a key aspect is to find the one or two important ones for your particular product and not to pick vanity metrics only because they look good and they are high. The step after is to monitor how long the people stay on your product, which you can mainly see through churn and repeat rate. The churn can be a revenue churn, basically the customers who stop paying for your product, or a product churn once the usage metrics that you defined before go to zero, aka the user becomes an inactive user. Repeat rate can be a useful retention indicator if your product is not a high usage type of product. For example, if you have a security tool that monitors potential breaches, you can monitor if the users react every time they get an alert, even if it's 2 times every 6 months. I personally separate product satisfaction from retention because I saw at several occasions products with a low NPS score but with a high retention rate. Simply because these products were not ready and fully polished yet, but they were solving hair on fire types of problems for their users. So even if they were unhappy about the quality of the product, they continue to use it nevertheless. You can define your own satisfaction indicators, but if you are not at that stage yet, a good old NPS, so Net Promoter Score, is a good place to start. As a conclusion, don't take this framework as what it's not. It's not a framework to develop precisely your product, but more to keep an overview of its overall progress and more importantly, to communicate it in reports and various presentations, which is what we will see in the next videos.